We're at 3:30, so we're going to make a start. And I think a few other teachers will come and join us as we make our way through. There's a couple more I'm going to let in now. So just be aware the nature of these things starting at 3:30 is that, might have a few people coming a bit late, but that's okay. So welcome to this free CPD on selecting your communications team this year. Let me introduce myself. I think I know most of you, but if you don't know me, my name is Sam Evans. I'm the head of programs for Smart School Councils and a former teacher. Greg, you're here too. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name's Greg. I think I've met most of you before and been on a lot of these CPD before summer. Wow. Maybe everyone could mute their microphones. That would be useful. And yeah, hello to everyone. Nice to meet you. Nice to see you.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, if you could mute your microphones for now, that'd be really useful, folks. And then when we get to questions and comments, I'll explain how we're going to do that in a second. We should also at this point be introducing our third speaker that you can see here on the slide, but unfortunately something's cropped up in school and Laurie couldn't join us to deliver the CPD. But we've got written responses from Laurie throughout as our sort of expert provider. And Greg, you're going to do your best Dagenham accent, aren't you, to impersonate her speech? Is that okay?
I might actually not do it because I think there might be some schools from Dagenham here, and I'd probably offend them. So I might just do my accent if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. You've got a good accent anyway. Hi, Debbie. Hi. Thanks for joining. Could you pop yourself on mute if that's okay? Just because we're picking up a bit of background noise from you. Thank you very much. Cool. Okay, so what we're doing in this CPD today. So let me just run you through the agenda very quickly. We're going to introduce ourselves, which we've done already. We're going to talk about the aims now and give you just a little background on Smart School Councils because I think it's helpful. We are going to then spend a bit of time recapping what a communications team is, which I think is probably a useful refresher for the time of year that we are, and how traditionally we have selected the communications team, because I think that whilst we might not be able to do that now, that's useful in the future. Hi, Rosie, great to have you. Could you please pop yourself on mute for now, just because we're picking up a bit of background noise? Thank you. Thirdly, then, we're going to talk about why we can't select our communications team in the way that we would normally do so because of social distancing bubbles and the sort of COVID-19 challenge, which leads us on to then the meat of what we're going to be talking about, which is 3 ways that Laurie and some our other expert teachers have come up with ideas, different methods for selecting their comms team this year. We want to hear from you guys at that point as well, if you've got any views or comments on that, and then we'll take questions and sort of more comments at the end. But I think rather than just waiting for things at the end, the chat box is a really useful thing that we can use. Greg said hi to you all there and everyone, and thanks for coming along. You should see a little orange flash when somebody uses the box. Please use that to comment or ask questions as we go along. Greg's going to be having a look at those and he'll bring them in for us at the right stage. So if you could introduce yourself right now, that's a good way of getting to use the chat box. So type in a quick message to say hi and what school you're from, and maybe tell us, definitely tell us what's the best thing about being back in school so far this year. Give us a highlight of terms so far. So get yourself using the chat box so that we know and we feel comfortable interacting with each other. And we'll be looking out for those in a second. Whilst you're busy typing away all those things that we can respond to, Greg, you're going to give us a quick run through of the sort of background of the organisation, which helps to set what we're doing today, aren't you?
Yeah, so apologies if some of you have heard of this already or several times already, but I kind of forgot what we did when term started. So I needed a refresher, so I thought it might have been useful for you guys as well. So Smart School Council is a charity founded by a youth worker and myself, who used to work at DFE. And as you'll know, what our mission is to help young people lead change and through pupil voice, and the important thing is that that's for everybody. We're trying to involve everybody, and the core program that we do is whole school program of pupil voice. We've got lots of members across the country with lots of different types of schools, and what we know is that there's a huge range of benefits to young people being involved in pupil voice and democracy and leading change. Can you move to the next slide, Sam? Thank you. Both to their skills and their development and their life chances in the future, but also to make them engaged with their school. But as we know, we think that the way that schools normally do this could be improved. So a normal school council suffers from lots and lots of different issues. Same things come up every year. They get to Christmas, they run out of steam, loads of paper-based stuff, often teacher-led, usual same people every year. And obviously this year we've got this new thing, which obviously you guys will know, thrown into that. How do you involve young people's voices when they're in bubbles? So and so one thing that we're very conscious of is that kind of usual suspects thing. So only 2 in 5 pupils think their school council listens to them. Worrying, especially when they're almost in every school in the UK. And also this next statistic is even more worrying, I think. So, and I think probably some of you have seen this. So if you've got more than 200 books at home, you've got 62% chance of being involved in school council elections. But if it's less than 10 books at home, you've only got a 30% chance. So we basically just don't think that's fair. And I think you guys would probably agree with that. So what we do with our Smart School Council approach is to involve every single pupil in the school using our digital tools. So that's why we're here. Sorry, Sam, that was as quick as I could do it. But I just wanted to remind everybody what we're doing and why we're here. So yeah, thanks. I hope that was useful.
Thanks, Greg. No, I think that's important just to sort of set the context for the discussion we're going to go on to have. So thank you for that. And thank you to everybody for chatting in the box, the chat box rather, to let us know where you're from. So I'm not going to say hi to everybody individually, but it's fantastic to see what you've been getting up to in school so far. And Rosie, I'm so glad that your sort of highlight is going to be relaunching Pupil Voice this year, which I'm really pleased about. So yeah, keep them coming in, and hi to everybody. Chloe, I'm glad you can hear us again. If there are any problems, let us know in the chat box again, and Greg will jump in there and help you out. Okay, so let's get into the real sort of bones of what we're talking about today, which is our communications team and how we're going to get that leadership group up and running to support our Smart School Council this year. It's useful, I think, to remind ourselves of what a communications team is and what it's doing or meant to do. So what are they? Well, you can remember the 3 parts, I'm sure, of the Smart School Council's model. The communication team sits in the middle of these 3 elements as the sort of minions that are there to run the program, not with you, but for you in a degree, to make sure that what we're doing here is genuinely student-led. So they're a group of students, a small group of students who run the Smart School Council's model, not the teacher, keep everybody informed, keep everybody involved. They each have an individual role, and they meet regularly to ensure that there's consistency of application of the program going by. Now, that's what we're expecting communications teams to be able to do by the end of the year. Of course, it takes some time to train them to make sure that they're competent and able and supported to do that. But that's their function within the wider model. They are there to run the program and to ensure that everybody else in school is getting their say through class meetings, through action teams, and through their specific roles that help to run them. So what are these specific roles? Well, there are many, but there are 5 core communication team roles that we talk about, and that when we go into schools to train communications team, are the roles we talk about most importantly. So the class meeting tool leader, 1 or 2 students who's responsible for setting up the class meetings, however often you run them, putting the question in, attaching the images, and getting that link sent out to teachers. Somebody who updates the progress board, so this board that's very prominent in school, so that everybody knows where we're at with all of our different actions and all of our different outcomes from our meetings. The staff liaison, a group of students, or 1 or 2 students, however many it is, who are responsible for being the sort of run between the communications team and staff, so that if we need to look for sources for questions, or we want to get teachers involved in action teams, wherever it might be, they're the ones running that. that. They're also the ones going around classes and reminding teachers, staff, whoever it should be, to run their class meetings, an important role. The question finders, who have a dedicated role that's phenomenally important. It's all about finding really good questions that we're going to ask through our class meetings, and then organisers in their sort of campaigning roles called action team developers, whose responsibility is to support action teams to get up and running. So these are the 5 roles. They don't have to have 5 individuals necessarily. They could be 10, they could be however many, but these are the things that we as an organisation feel are the critical ones for running a really good and sustainable communications team. If you've not seen any of these resources before, we can share copies of the slides at the end. And you can also access some sort of cards that we create and materials to support students in understanding what these roles are. So, how do we normally select your communications team then? Well, we went to Laurie for her views on this, as well as other teachers that we traditionally work with. And there are, I think, 4 ways that we would normally select our student leadership group to get our comms team up and running. They are elections, they are applications, sometimes they're direct invitations, and the last one is a bit of a sort of an unusual term to hear in schools, rebranding, which essentially means if you're joining the program for the first time this year and you've already got a school council, then the way your communication team gets selected is by rebranding the current school council into a communications team. The other ones are far more self-explanatory, aren't they, as methods for how we would, in a normal year at a normal time, select students or have students be appointed to the roles that we're discussing on the communications team. Lots of our schools change them yearly. Some of them like to stick to a routine. That's fine. It's like we don't prescribe one of these as being the most effective way necessarily, but it's right for us to articulate these are the different ways in which you can do it. So this is what Laurie's got to say. Greg, come on, tell us what Laurie's got to say.
Am I reading this out, Sam?
Yes, please.
Okay, so there's a picture of Laurie in the corner. I like that, very good. So I normally get them to apply, open to years 5 and 6 in the summer term for a specific job on the team. Appoint your children, then train with the current comms team, so they are ready to start in September. Any previous comms team members from year 5 can stay on in their roles, I guess, as they go through to year 6. That is a great idea, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think what Richard Alabon, which we should mention, which is Laurie's school in Dagenham, they are really good at as the transition between different cohorts of communication team members to make sure that in the summer term of every year, they've got this period of training so that when September comes, alongside all of the other things you're trying to concentrate on, you've got young people who are ready to go in their roles so that pupil voice is at a head start, I guess. So that's, I think it's useful for us to remind ourselves of what it would normally look like. And I don't want to use that word too much, but I think you'll forgive me for it. And what I hope will be a situation we can return to again in the future. But the central question really is, well, what's the challenge to doing that this year? And the challenge is that because of the differing interpretation of policy across schools, and because we have to keep our young people safe, which is ultimately the most important thing, and our staff too, that the young people who wouldn't traditionally be involved in the communications team may not be able to do that anymore. Why? Well, because they might be mixing social distancing year groups or bubbles, class bubbles, whatever it is the situation is in your school. And so that becomes a big challenge to us. I guess there are further challenges as well for you as being the lead teachers in school. If you don't normally, or you don't currently have access to the students that you would normally work with on your Smart School Council. So let's say, for example, when I taught, I was a year 3 teacher. And in my context, we would have year 5 and year 6 who'd be involved in the communications team because they're higher up in the school, they're more dependable, they've got a better sense of responsibility. Under the provisions that I know lots of schools have at the moment, I wouldn't be able to mix with those young people. I wouldn't be able to go and facilitate them in that role because my year group dictates I stick within the class or the year group that I was teaching. So these are the sorts of barriers that we're talking about and the ones that I think we're all facing at the moment. The good news is that this shouldn't stop us. we are going to give at least, well, for us at least, with Laurie and our expert teachers, 3 ways in which you can approach overcoming these challenges and essentially not allowing them to derail us. And how might they derail us? Well, I guess they might derail us in 2 ways. The first way is that it might become an obstacle that we can't surmount when we think, okay, well, because we can't have a communications team and I can't see the way through it, that means that pupil voice this year kind of just falls flat. We really want to avoid that happening, as I'm sure you can imagine, and I'm sure most schools do too. But the other way it could derail us, which I think is probably more likely, but is equally as bad, is that the onus and the burden, if you want to call it that, ends up on you as the lead of this program in school. And so with an inability to access your minions, if you want to call them that, these young people who are getting amazing opportunities and skills through leading this with you, that you take it all on yourself and it becomes something that you have to run. And we want to try and avoid that from happening as well. And the solutions we talk about should do that. Quick check-in. Does that sound okay with everybody so far? I can see there are a couple of comments coming up. I have to check them every now and again. Ben says the pupil voice is perhaps more important than ever this year. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, Ben. What we've spoken about quite a lot since terms has begun is about how young people have gone through this period over the last couple of months of a lack of control, of a period of uncertainty, a period of things happening to them that they have no way of influencing. And now as they return to school, it doesn't look the same anymore, and that's a reinforcement, I guess, of that feeling that we have to start giving them opportunities to have a direct say over the things that are happening to them. And I'll talk more about how we're doing that later on, but making sure that your communications team is there to run this program so that everybody gets their say is a really fundamental part of that. Good. So hopefully everybody's on board. If there's any confusion so far, just pop a comment in and Greg and I will respond to it. So, okay, what are the 3 ways that we are suggesting, or that our expert teachers more accurately are suggesting, you select your comms team this year? So there are open applications for a specific bubble or year group. This is what Laurie is doing in Richard Alabon, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We've got another option, which is to have specific bubble or year group elections. This is a slightly more complicated one, but I think it's really worth us spending some time on. And then the third way of selecting your comms team is to give individuals to specific students that you know you might have access to, or you do have access to, for now up until maybe the end of autumn term, and then expanding it from there on. So these are our approaches to responding to the challenge that we're in this year. I'm also extremely conscious of the fact that we have some phenomenal teachers in the CPD today, some of whom have been members for a very long time, others not so long, but have done very, very well on the program so far. And you may have your own ideas and things that we and our Laurie and our other teachers haven't thought of yet. So if you think I'm missing something here, and you've got a fantastic piece of insight for what your approach might be, please use the chat box and let us know. And what I think would be best for us to do is to come to you and meet you and let you talk about what your approach is. So I'll leave that out there. If you have any ideas that are in addition to these, please let me know. So let's go into these 3 then and start to unpack them a little bit. The first one, open applications for specific bubble or year groups. So what does that look like? Well, it's like this. You would invite students to submit applications to join the communications team as a team. Or what you might do is ask them to apply for specific roles on the team. I mentioned the 5 core roles that we've talked about earlier on. It could be those 5, it could be others that you think are really important, whatever. So it's either an application to join a team in general, or an application for a specific role. And then you decide which year group or which class bubble, whatever it is you've got, you are going to open this up to. And I think that there are 2 considerations for this from what I've been discussing with Laurie, and they are a year group that's higher up in the school, so that I guess that we can rely upon them to take up the challenge a bit more at the moment, generally speaking. Or the second consideration is that you choose a year group bubble or a class bubble that you have access to. and that this is important as well, because if we go back to my example of earlier on, if I'm in year 3 and I think, okay, great, I'm going to open applications to join the comms team, but only from year 6, but I can't socially mix with year 6, and that's not going to get us very far unless I get another staff member on board. So those are the 2 things I think that we are so important to consider in choosing which year group or which bubble particularly you think this might work with. I guess the other things then to add into that are sort of the logistics of it. Have you got access to an area or a classroom that's associated with that bubble so that you can physically meet? If you can't meet, then that's going to be a huge impediment to making this work. And then lastly, what I think is key here is starting with a smaller number. And then I think this is possibly a theme that will follow each of the options, and expanding them across the year as and when the environment around us allows us to be able to do that. So this one is very closely tied to what Laurie is up to with Richard Alibon. So we're going to cross to Greg again to hear from Laurie.
This year we sent out applications home during the summer term. However, we didn't receive much response. So we relaunched this term and are currently getting applications in. We're only accepting applications from year 6 to ensure we don't mix bubbles. And I guess just the thing on that is basically the whole idea of the comms team. If you do just have a small group, it's okay, because everybody is getting involved in the class meeting. So it's even if you pick, and I guess this is one of Sam's options, even if you pick 5 or 6 pupils to set up and run them, then it's not a massive issue because everyone's getting involved in the class meeting. So yeah, but it's great they've been able to Laurie's been able to consider it from a kind of year 6 perspective. But yeah, that was my Laurie impression. Sorry, Sam.
No, it's good. You've got one more to come up, which I'm very excited for. But yeah, no, that's good. Thanks, Greg. And yeah, I think as far as the theory of representation as it comes to us when we consider pupil voice, you're really right to stress there, Greg, that everybody is getting their say through participation in the class meetings, however regularly you run them. So it is not necessary for there to be a representation of all year groups on your communications team, or for there to be a particular method that says that you have to elect or choose unless your school is really interested in doing that kind of thing. The communications team, their job is to help run the program and get other people doing and saying and having their say. So it's about making sure we've got the best people in order to do that. And this is how Laurie and Richard Alibon are approaching this first option. So yeah, things to stress is access to that year group, I think, and the dependability and then the reliability of those that you're offering a chance to apply for these roles for. Okay, second one then, which is about elections. Now, I've got personally, I've got sort of conflicting relationship with elections in school, because it's an important part of our democracy as a society. It's an important part, I think, of British values and our curriculum. But representative democracy, this idea of voting for somebody to go and make decisions on our behalf, is kind of the whole thing we're there to critique. But I accept that they do have a place in school. So if elections are really important in school, I understand why that is. This is a way in which you can do it. It's more complicated than the first one, but it definitely will work. So this is what you might do. So under the premise that elections are really important to us, what we might do is decide to allocate specific roles on the communications team to a year group. So if you think back to the 5 roles earlier on, think of the class meeting tool leader, for example. That's a really important role for a leadership candidate to be able to undertake on your communications team. And you might think, okay, well, year 11, they're going to be a good year to do this with. And so we're going to hold an election within year 11 for a number of candidates to campaign and put themselves forward for that position. And then for action team developers, we'll go to year 10. And for progress board updaters, we'll go to year 9. And you can follow my logic on from there, I'm sure. I guess that example works if you've got year group bubbles. If you have class bubbles, then I guess it would be about increasing the number of roles that you have that are possible to be elected for. And then those elections themselves happen within one bubble, which means that you aren't breaking any of the social distancing guidelines. Now, where this then is another layer of complexity on top of this then, which is to say, okay, well, if I want to put myself forward, I get elected by my peers, I'm going to go on and do that role, fantastic. Like, how can I do that role? I have to do it remotely. I can't do that as a team meeting together. Now, Sarah Jane, this links very much to your idea that you've seen in the chat box, which is that you want to try and run your communications team digitally so that you can either maybe work with the students you're working with last year or do it in a more traditional way. I think that makes absolute sense. I'll come to you if you feel comfortable after we've discussed these three to talk more about that so we can learn from you. But yeah, I guess the element that we'd incorporate into this idea is that then you'd have to meet either digitally or do each one of the roles separately and have a staff member associated with that year group or with that class group that can mix with them and can support young people to do it. So I guess this has been designed as a specific way in which you can have elections still. And I think it's a really important consideration, particularly for the time of year and that style of democracy that we talk about quite a lot. So that's our second of our three options. And then we come to our third and final one, which is, I guess, like Greg has alluded to already, could feel a little contradictory for democracy, but it's not when we consider things like class meetings, but that's choosing or inviting specific students. These are the considerations if you want to try and do this. They need to be targeted at a year group or a bubble that you have access to. That might seem obvious, but I think that's a key point to stress. To consider the attributes that you think you're looking for these 5 roles. And I think the last bit is the most important part, which is to invite a small number of students. So you say, right, we're not yet launching a full communications team for all of the obvious reasons we've already discussed. But what we can do instead is have a slimmed down, really small team of maybe 5 individuals that I have access to, individuals that I think that we can depend upon and that will benefit from this, but also do a fantastic job in making sure everybody else gets involved in the school. And we are just going to meet and we're going to have a go at doing this temporarily until we can expand later on when the social environment allows us to do that. I guess it may not be the most satisfying approach necessarily this one, but I think it's really important. And it's really important because ultimately it means that you as the lead in your school aren't taking on this burden by yourself. That I think that's the important part. We need to be delegating, we need to be involving young people in this. This is a program that is led by young people, and this is one of the ways that allows us to do that. So yeah, that's our third option. Now, it's difficult for me to both talk about this and read the comments at the same time, but I can see that they're coming through and there's some really good ones. Greg, I'm gonna ask you to sort of maybe bring some comments in that you've responded to.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, we mentioned Ben thinks that people voice is perhaps more important than ever this year, which I think is a comment worth rereading, as I agree with it so much. And as you mentioned, Sarah Jane was thinking about how we might be able to use Google Classroom to hold comms team meetings, and it sounds like it's a work in progress. And Angela has mentioned about like how do you approach this? She's in a secondary school, and would it be possible to kind of make a sort of mini school council in each year group, so that they can do projects or come together and then feed back as a whole, which I think sounds quite, in some ways, it sounds quite similar to your second idea or second proposal for the comms team. But also, I guess it would need to just be manageable in terms of like how many staff that we could do that. So yeah, lots of good comments. I mean, my favourite option is just pick them. Basically, you've got loads on at the moment. Like, pick 5 kids who really want to do it. You'll know those 5, and it's okay. Why make it difficult for yourself with everything that's going on at the moment? I think, and it's okay to pick them, because the worst thing is that the class meetings sort of drop off because you spend months trying to sort out your comms team. Why not like kickstart it, get it going, that's my sorry, you only asked for my analysis of the comments and not my analysis, but yeah, you got both. Sorry.
That's fine. Thanks, Greg. I appreciate both your analysis and your insight, and I think that's an important point to stress. As you know, as the founder of the charity and sort of the author of this idea. Okay, so let's check in. I'll do it this time, Greg, as you've just spoken. Let's check in with Laurie, one of our expert teachers, and what they say on this as a sort of a summary, I think, for us to hold in our minds. Training, and this is, I guess, about like what we do with the comms team as and when we have them. Training the comms team itself then is going to look different this year as well. Once selected, I will use the children who were on the team last year to try and help them. So for context, the children she's referring to here were in year 5 this last year and now in year 6 this year. So they come from within that same social grouping. It'll be harder as they can't watch the other children doing it like they have in previous years. So there'll be a lot of modeling from me and how to do the different jobs. So I think that's a useful thing for us to take away as well, which we'll refer to at the very end, is okay, when you do have a communications team, how are we going to approach training them? How are we going to approach giving them the best chance to be successful in their role? So I would like to give a bit, before we talk about more about training, I'd like to give some time over to some more comments and some more thoughts. So if you've got, whether it's Sarah Jane or if it's Angela or Ben, who've commented, I think Chloe as well commented so far with some of your suggestions. I'd like to hear from you again. I think we would all benefit from hearing from you. So I need to be able to move my screen so I can see more than just my own face. And then I'll come to you if you fancy chatting. Sarah Jane, do you want to come in at this point and maybe tell us a bit more about your idea?
Yeah. It's so important, I think, that we meet as a team, but I don't know how we're going to do that because we're only allowed in our specific bubbles. So I was thinking with Google Classroom, you can have a live form that everyone could type into. So it's like a discussion. I just think it's a way that we could kind of have a meeting. I'm not too sure. I think I'm going to give it a trial with some of my old comms team and see how it goes.
That's cool. Yeah, I think Ben's just mentioned that using Google Classroom might help with this. I don't know if you use that in schools, Jane, if we use something different to it as a platform, but yeah, that's something that might be able to help or support that kind of ongoing discussion. Yeah, no, I can completely see that, and I think that using technology, I think my internet's being a bit dodgy, so I hope you can still hear me. Using technology to support those interactions is really important, so that's brilliant, thank you. Let's go to Angela. You've said a lot. It'd be great to hear from you. Do you fancy coming in for a quick chat? Have I asked you at the wrong moment there?
No, you're fine. It's just an idea. I've not put anything together. I've only lost 2 of my comms team out of the entire year. There was only one year 11 on last year, so a lot of them are still here and they're all in different bubbles. I had one from every year group last year, which was really good, and they got quite a lot accomplished. It's just a matter of, I think it's that next step into, like you said, rebranding, maybe kind of rebranding and taking that step forward where we can, because our year groups are completely separate in separate blocks. So if we're going to do anything for the school, and I can't see it changing before Christmas, it might be nice to set up, or I'm thinking it might be nice to set up one in each year group team, but just with one individual that can come and feed back, and maybe have a socially distanced meeting.
Yeah, I mean, do you think, I guess, yeah, that's like Greg said, it's a bit like the second idea we're thinking, and I think that could definitely work. Do you think that that's the sort of thing you could get support from your colleagues?
I think there probably be a few people that I could kind of cajole. Yeah, there might be. If not, I mean, the kids that I've been bombarded by, at least 3 kids that have been wanting to start it up again. So there are definitely a lot of enthusiasm off the kids. And I think one of the massive pushes and one of the things that's absolutely fantastic about this is that it is the kids that push it through. So it might just be a bit of monitoring and maybe asking somebody just to be that base question within the, like I said, it's only thoughts, it's only like ideas. I'm just kind of wondering what everybody else was doing and then thinking about where we can go with ours. Because like you said, it's a bit difficult, isn't it? Everybody's circumstances are different, everybody's schools are running differently, and we don't know how long we're going to be like this for.
Yeah, that's it. I think I think you're absolutely right. I think these thoughts are really helpful for us all to hear. So thank you, Angela. And yeah, it sounds like you've got staff you can support or you can lean on. I'm not going to elaborate as to why that might be, whether you've got blackmail or dirt on them that you're going to use. But yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think that's a really legitimate way of trying to do it. I think on a scale that might be one of the more complicated ways to do it, but that doesn't mean necessarily it's not the right way of doing it if you can make it work. So thank you. Go on. Sorry, is there another voice there?
Next week, right? Should be on the desktop, hopefully.
Oh, I think that's somebody who doesn't know that their microphone is on, but that's okay. I am aware that there's a lot more of us than just the ones who've spoken so far. So yeah, does anybody else who would really encourage you to share some of your thoughts, if you feel open to it, or share with us what you are thinking of doing, or whether any of the three that we suggested are ones you're going to try. Actually, that's a good question. I'd really like to hear, and would be helpful of the ones you've heard of today, whether ours or anybody else's. Like, which one are you going to try? Which one do you think resonates with you? So yeah, pop yourself in the chat box if you want to chat, or if you've got your camera on, like Susie does. Not that I'm going to pick on Susie, but I can just happen to see her right now. You can wave at me, and I will come to you for a bit of a share of what your plan is going to be. This is when nobody says anything, but I'll just look at Susie's face because she's laughing at me. Okay, go on, Susie.
Okay, so I'm thinking of probably going with class elections, so that I have one in each class, and then setting up a Smart School Council Google Classroom. So that's separate from everything else, because of all that's what we've been using in the school, and then try and talk to them through that way. And then obviously I'm only in year 3, so I can't obviously mix with any of the other bubbles, but I think if we just start it, so at least there's one child in each class, and then I might allocate jobs to each year team, but I need to find a willing staff member.
How's your blackmail book?
Pretty full. No.
Yeah. You'll be all right. You'll get it. That sounds good though, Susie. Thank you very much for sharing. I think that, yeah, that's going to be a good approach, and I think it's quite a popular one, from what I can see, with other people that are commenting. So thanks for that, Susie. That sounds fantastic, and best of luck with it. And remember, we're here to support, and that's for everybody on this call. We're here to help out in any way we can. So Greg, we'll come up to you for a bit of a recap on what's going on with the comments. Is that okay?
Yeah, I feel like a kind of reporter on the ground.
It's a bit Eurovision, this part, isn't it? Where I keep coming to you.
Yeah. So interesting comment from Ben here. He said he thinks he's going to go with the invitation option. He's got a good team of year 11s who are keen, and a good year 10 team that could support them if we have digital comms for them. And also he can meet with each team. So it's like, if you've got some keen, enthusiastic students that it's easy enough and practical to meet, that sounds like a brilliant idea, Ben. I would definitely go with that. And interestingly, we've got Mel from one of our favourite schools, Meridian Angel. I think the invitation option, as we never had a chance to really launch the process once we chose our team. So yeah, Meridian Angel, we sort of picked the comms team, incredible comms team, one of my favourite comms teams. And yeah, and that was quite late on in the year, and we didn't really ever get started. So I think that's the best option. So it might be about sort of seeing who of those pupils want to continue. Ideally, hopefully all of them, because they get to work with me and Sam again. So yeah, some good options, some good practically minded stuff. Debbie has also said she's attached to the year 6 bubble. So I'm going to go with a couple of reps from each year 6 class to form a team of 6 kids. Children throughout the school are so desperate to start the class meetings as a priority, so I could use the 6 year 6s to get the questions, actions going. I think that's a great idea. 6 kids who are enthusiastic and keen and able is enough for a comms team. And if it means you can get your class meetings going, then that's great. We're still sending out a weekly class meeting if you want to use that as a kind of starting point. Hopefully you've been seeing those in your inbox. Yeah, Debbie, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, brilliant. That sounds fantastic. And yeah, well done, Debbie. I think that's a really good idea also. And it's so nice to hear that the children are really keen to get going with their class meetings again. So I guess where are we in summary then, folks? Just two things I think from me to mention, and then we'll make sure that we keep the timing. It's got about 5 minutes or so. The first thing I think to reiterate for us is whatever you decide is going to be the approach for you this term, whether it's these ones, something different, a variation, fantastic. But I guess make sure that whatever you're doing is something that isn't going to be a burden or too complicated. Because like Greg said earlier on, if it's something that for even the best will in the world and for the right ethical choices becomes really hard to implement, and then it stumbles you on your progress with class meetings and getting the actual program running, then that's going to be something that is more detrimental than choosing maybe an easier option with the communications team. So that's definitely the message I think that I would get across to you, is don't make it too complicated. Having one and running the meetings are for a whole school impact the most important thing that you can do. And then the other thing from me to mention, because it directly links to what we're discussing today, is that for the first time, quite excitedly, we are going to be running a sort of national comms team sort of conference, which is a kind of a working title, but it's a digital event that we're going to be running on the 30th of October this year, which is for communication team members from across the country and across the world with our international schools to come and join Greg and I for a half day of training, of celebrating them and their roles, and empowering them and enthusing them to go into the year in their leadership role, getting everybody else involved. We can't give you any more details on that for now because we're not ready to do that. But I wanted to share the date with you as one to maybe save in the diary as an opportunity for you to get involved. This is something that we're going to be offering to our schools for a small fee. Again, we're not really sure what that's going to look like right now, but it's going to be a fantastic opportunity to not only give your comms team a fantastic launch experience, but also to feel a part of the bigger picture of Smart School Councils across the nation and see all these other schools who are doing something similar to you in maybe very different settings. So that's cool. Wanted to mention that. I'm not sure where we are in the comments, so let's go for a final words from Greg or any comments that have come through before we close.
Two last things for me. No, three last things, sorry. Rosie's just had an idea. She's thinking about having a meeting, comms team, all in one bubble outside with her socially distanced, then could put them on PowerPoint for people to share. I think that's a really good, it's nice to get outside, isn't it, as well? I thought that was a good idea. And Chloe has mentioned that she would like a bit of a talk through with you, Sam, about kind of how to approach it. So Chloe will be in touch and very happy to help. And a few comments about our class meeting suggestions, which we're sending out every week on a Friday. Debbie says that she's liking them. Hopefully other people are liking them as well. We've got a really good question coming up next week, so get ready for that. It's going to be a great one. And Ben says he likes them too. There's 2 people out there of our 360 schools. So I'm very glad about that. So that's my 3 things. And my 4th thing, just a final word, is just like a big thank you for your time. And you know, it was kind of quite a hairy term last summer for us because, you know, small charity, school shutting. So it feels very nice to be seeing you all and yeah, hanging out again. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Yeah, like Greg says, it's fantastic to be in a position where we're still supporting you, we're still working towards these fantastic aims together. And I'm sure that even with all these challenges, we're going to have a fantastic year. And like Ben said at the start, it's more important now than ever. I know everybody's saying that about whatever it is they do at the moment, but I think that that's not a cliche when it comes to pupil voice and supporting young people's well-being through democracy right now. So we're going to close 2 minutes early. You're welcome. Go and have 2 minutes free time, whatever you're going to do, which is obviously not a thing for you as teachers, but there we are. But yeah, thank you very much for your time. If you want to follow up with any of this for any reason, you can hang around in the chat because I'll be here for the next 15 minutes or so if you want to have a quick chat with me about anything. Chloe, maybe that's, if you've got the time, that might be something that you want to do. If not, we will follow up with you via email or our various communication channels, which sounds really formal, but you know what I mean. So yeah, thanks very much, guys, and I'm sure we'll chat to you all soon.